Hello, Guy. I had a terrible flood here in this house on Saturday.
Yes, I heard. Yes, you were caught naked on the stairs by a firewoman.
I woke up at 6 a.m. and water was gushing into my bedroom. My wife and I were in bed, and it was coming through the sort of fire smoke alarm thing. My boy's bath had burst at the back or something, and anyway, the fire alarm goes off. I'm half naked running down the stairs. One of my sons had let the fireman in. I didn't know, and a firewoman's coming up and was confronted by me in my full glory,
the full Brian Ricks farce.
But the one thing I was worried about, I was going downstairs to throw myself over my vinyl records.
Over your Blue Monday 12-inch.
Over my but excuse me. She never said anything like that. Throw yourself over your 12-inch. But this is going to be a difficult one today, isn't it?
It's going to be difficult in terms of. I mean, I must say, I used to know Hooky on it. I used to see him a fair bit. I haven't seen him for many, many years, so I'm quite excited.
When I say difficult, I mean it's so much in his life.
There's just no. It's because the thing is, we've all written books, but he's taken to it. He's kept writing books. He's written three,
and the audiobooks are fantastic, by the way. Absolute brilliant turn of phrase.
I read them properly.
You had leather bound. Folios.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and also he's instigated a degree course at Salford University.
Has he really?
Hasn't he, for music management? Yeah. He's never.
I didn't know that.
He's
Your
never.
research is
stops.
incredible.
Yeah.
I'm put to shame already.
Let's get him on.
Welcome to the Rockonteurs.
Okay, guys, I'm ready.
This was great, guys. It's so great to talk to two guys that have done this.
Well, it's a big tune for sure. I actually wrote that originally for Tina Turner.
Of course, I had gone and found Joni Mitchell down in Florida and brought her back.
What people forget about Bowie is that he was such a kind man.
I've listened to a few of them and they've been really good, man. I'm sitting in the back of the car coming into London. They're brilliant.
I know you're musicians, but you've been more professional than a lot of journalists.
Remember me? I'm in a band now. It's called Roxy Music.
You know this thing about the 10,000 hours of experience?
Oh, yeah.
Get good at something. When we recorded Arnold Lane, we'd done about 50 hours.
The Rockonteurs podcast with Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt.
Hooky.
Hiya.
Long time.
Oh my God! Don't even talk about the last time.
Go on. What was the last time?
Well, actually, no. The last time was at the bass players.
Oh yeah, that's
audition,
right.
Wasn't it? But it was the one before that was the one we shall not talk.
Sorry, was it the bass players audition? Did Guy lose?
Yeah, he was only failed.
Yeah. Again. No, actually. No, because Peter, I do want to mention one thing, because I'm not at home. Obviously, I don't live in a castle. I'm actually in a dining room at a club where I'm rehearsing to play tonight. But I did actually bring this with me because many, many moons ago, after you and I were at some party in Notting Hill, and you came back.
Sorry, that was a bass that you held up, a bass guitar.
It was a Music Man Stingray, my lovely old blonde Music Man Stingray. And for either you picked it up or I forced it on you, and I went, "Go on, mate." And you played "Love Will Tear Us Apart" on that bass.
You made me do that as well. You forced.
Did I make you do that? I thought, like everything else.
I could barely speak.
So Hooky's DNA is on that guitar. I hope you haven't changed the strings.
No, of course not.
Are you?
I feel honoured, boys. Thank you for that thought, but I don't think it made much difference.
You've been really busy. I don't know. Do you live out in Spain? Is that what you? While you're there, or you're on holiday?
No, I've got an apartment a small apartment in Mallorca that we've had for 20 years. So I just travel backwards and forwards, which is nice.
Because I can't believe how busy you are. You're really making this. You're putting us all to shame. Is what you're doing.
Well, do you know what? As much as I hate to say it, when we were together as New Order, we did very little. And I found that the most frustrating thing in the world, the fact that we had this wonderful catalogue that people were dying to hear, and we just didn't play. So when we split up, I really went for it. And, I remember Barney once saying to me, "You'd play in Beirut, you bastard." And I thought, yeah, that sounds like an interesting place, Beirut. Why wouldn't you play in Beirut?
But also, we've all, everyone here has written a book. You wrote a book, and then you clearly really took to it, because you've written 3 now. Well, you're clearly very comfortable.
I have to say, mate, I had 3 fantastic stories, which were a gift to Joy Division, the Hacienda, and New Order, for varying reasons, were a complete story. And it was weird because I got offered quite a lot of money to do one book. And when I suggested doing 3, they all said no. So I said, well, I'm not doing it then. I'll do it on my own. And in the end, it was only Simon and Schuster that even would consider letting me do 3 books. They all wanted to cram it into one, which I've just felt wouldn't have done any of the stories, giving it the proper respect that it needed.
I read the Hacienda book when it came out, and I've got to say, if it was fiction, it would be probably the funniest book I've ever read. But being as it isn't, it is just the most...
Yeah, I mean, if Guy Ritchie had written that script, you'd go, fuck off. This is like a parody of a parody.
You should have seen the stuff I had to leave out.
I bet.
It was, it's strange how you look back at your life, and I know that you two are exactly the same with all the things that you've been lucky enough to achieve and lucky enough to do. It's the same thing, isn't it? You look back at it when you sat, watching telly or something, and you're thinking, oh my God, did I really go through all that? Yeah. And now we went through a lot of great things with the groups, etc. The Hacienda, I must admit, turned round, and we ended up going through a very bad thing. So, and in a way it was because we'd achieved the good things that we ended up with the bad thing. And Rob Gretton and I, who managed it on our own for, 10 years, we just didn't want to let the people of Manchester down. We'd given them something so good that we decided, with copious amounts of vodka and copious amounts of drugs, to sort of throw ourselves into the dangerous bit. And now it seems really reckless. I mean, if my son was telling me he was doing the things that I were doing, I would go bonkers.
But isn't it strange, at the time you would never have dreamt that one day string orchestras would be playing that music, not only Joy Division but the Hacienda stuff that you do with Mike Pickering.
Yes. And I'm sure, again, that you two are exactly the same. We spent all our younger lives ripping off orchestras, using the emulator, to give us an orchestral sound without bothering with the people in the orchestra. So I suppose in a funny way, it's like it's come full circle and you're actually giving something back for the amount of, shall we say, artistic license you took from them. But I mean, it's
That's
nice.
a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to do because it takes the music to a different... As I've got older, I have definitely become more melancholy and more philosophical about the whole thing. Not particularly New Order, but definitely the Hacienda and Joy Division. And playing the orchestral versions actually fulfills that destiny for me, if you like. And I'm lucky because as Peter Hook and the like, we can do the wonderful orchestral versions, and then we can go off and rock our socks off, as we often do. So we get to do both sides of it, and Joy Division, to my mind, actually delivers quite well on both sides.
Do you know, that's
I'm a lucky.
Yeah, it's nice to have the space and the light of it, because it's, I've been on Deep Time, I've always loved those records, but it's dark stuff, it's...
Yeah, to feature the lyrics and to pick out one melody and make a big thing out of that melody sort of enhances, to me, certain aspects of it. And I must admit that when we did it at the Albert Hall, I mean, it's people... my son always tells me about the bad things that people say, and the first thing that people say, he's trying to make money. He's trying to make money again. He just wants more money out of Joy Division. And my God, if anybody ever thought working with an orchestra was a way to get rich, then they're completely and utterly wrong.
What's interesting, Peter, is that there's interviews with you in the early days, and I think you didn't fully engage with Ian's darkness at that point. That maybe it wasn't really something that you had issues on that with the way the first album sat, with that there's some of the darkness in that. But as you say, as you've grown older, you've become more melancholy and in a way tuned more in to what that aged soul of Ian Curtis was going through at 21.
I must admit that you're absolutely correct. And the interesting thing about coming from a punk band was that because of Factory Records being completely independent, we were entitled and sort of felt entitled, if you like, and sort of encouraged to be as obnoxious as we possibly could. So they didn't feel a need to engage with anybody. Journalist, radio. I mean, I listened to interviews and oh my God, I'm cringing so bad because you're such an obnoxious little bastard.
We've all done that.
Yeah, I know, and it becomes about growing up, doesn't it? You know, and realizing what you've got and what you've done. I mean, I remember when we did Control, there was a launch at the Canadian Film Theatre, and I went over to do a Q&A, and the first question said, "Oh, I'd like to ask Peter Hook." And I'd said, "Yeah, oh yes, I'm very flattered. What do you want to know?" And he said, "Why is it for the first 15 years of your career you wouldn't say anything? And now you won't fucking shut up."
Nice.
And, oh my God.
Rude.
You know, but I mean, in a funny way, it wasn't a nice way of saying it, but he was being absolutely correct. But the thing is, on those first 15 years, it was much more fun to tell Radio 1 DJ to fuck off or get stuffed. Or I'm not telling you about that or whatever. That was quite fun thing to do, because when you're in, you can get away with it.
But also with, I mean, in that whole post-punk period, the level of the pretentiousness in music journalism was so.
Paul Marley,
you know what I mean?
Talking about now.
Yeah. I mean, and Ian Penman and stuff. It was so like, who the hell did they think they were?
Well, yeah. I mean, and in a funny way, it was a contrast to the groups, wasn't it? Because the groups were actually, in some ways, very straightforward.
Yeah, but having all this stuff laid upon layers and layers and what they're doing and what they're saying, it's like, really, are we?
I mean, the one thing I've come to realise is that Gary's absolutely correct, is that Ian had a much older head on his shoulders. Particularly show it in many ways, but when you look at his lyrics and when you look at his attitude that he had to the group and stuff, it was much more intense and maybe heavier than ours, than mine and Barney's in particular. Steve was always very quiet. Me and Barney were always the jokers, as you know, Guy. You know Barney very well, don't you? So
yeah. Well, I haven't spoken to him for years, to be honest.
I won't hold that against you. Neither have I, mate. I've not spoken.
I don't know what I've done.
Yeah, well, you're saying we know what I've done.
We might get onto some of that, Hooky, but
yeah,
I'm in good company with you, mate, aren't I?
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what? It's funny though, because there are.
And mate, acrimonious band splits, mate.
Yeah.
With this,
but there's quite a lot of. I mean, you're a few years older than me, and I know that doesn't mean anything now, but it means a lot when you're a bit younger and you're looking at bands. But we both had our cathartic moment at exactly the same band, because when I'm listening to what you would, you reading your stuff about going to see the Sex Pistols at Lesser Free Trade Hall in Manchester. That's my story for going to see the Sex Pistols at the Screen on the Green. Guy's bored of this story. He fucking hates me talking about going to see the Sex Pistols because he never did.
That's because
I want to hear. I like hearing a Hooky talk about it.
That changed my life. I was in bands before, with like little, kids bands, and then I went along with Steve Norman and Steve Dagger, and we went into school in the week after when school went back in August, and formed the band that became Spandau Ballet. It was the big kickoff. It changed everything, and that was so important to you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really weird, inspiring moment, considering that I'd never learned to play an instrument, couldn't play an instrument, and for a long time afterwards couldn't play an instrument. So the fact that you were inspired to be in a group was actually quite weird. I mean, the thing that I loved is that that attitude. I'd been to see Deep Purple the week before, and Led Zeppelin before that, and Santana. So you were used to a certain way of acting that these groups had. And I remember being really annoyed because Carlos Santana came on going peace and love, namaste, and all this lot, and said, "We are here to play for as long as you desire." Everyone went, "Yay!" And then he went after an hour and a half and 2 encores. Full of bullshit.
The thing about that Pistols gig is because I remember famously for years in the interview, you've always said, the things, they were so bad, they were so awful. But then you said something really, and I went and listened to the bootleg of that gig. It's really good.
Yeah, I know, and they're really.
It's amazing. I mean, Anarchy sounds like almost like the record. It's incredibly good.
I mean,
that's what's extraordinary. So it's more like you were being sold this thing of we're shit
by the sound man.
Do you know what I mean?
By the sound man, without a shadow of a doubt, and without it sounding as awful as it did, we wouldn't have been inspired, because the thing that inspired us was the fact that they didn't seem to be able to play. And that seems ridiculous, because as soon as I heard the bootleg, I thought, hang on a minute, this is weird. But by that time, we were really
good.
We'd had the bite of the cherry, and there was literally, no going back. And we were a group, it seems absolutely ridiculous that at 21, with absolutely no idea what a bloody bass guitar was, that would inspire you to do it.
But also the fact of just the people in that room. I mean, wasn't it? It's every single person in that room.
Supposedly, yeah. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I'm sure there's been some mythologizing about that.
But a lot of them were inspired in the same way. I mean, and it's actually quite various, isn't it? You've got Mick Hucknall there as well, completely different path, completely different music. So there was something about the spirit, or maybe, it was something the careers teacher at the school never told you,
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember feeling the same, and I've tried to think of what that was like, that emotion. The first band I saw actually on that night was the Buzzcocks, because they were with Howard, because they were supporting along with the Clash. And of course, you went on, and your first gig was supporting the Buzzcocks. I mean, we ended up making a band, but we would only dream. I think, the Killjoys we supported once, or Chelsea we supported once, but the Buzzcocks,
Yeah, but how nuts it was then, mate, was that when we did the first gig supporting the Buzzcocks, Pauline Black was there from Penetration. And she said to us, I'm doing a gig on Friday. Why don't you come down and play with us? So our second gig was the same week. Buzzcocks support first, then Penetration in Newcastle City Hall on the week after. And there was an amazing comradeship and a clanship between all the bands, which was quite interesting because that soon faded and soon disappeared because all bands hate each other, don't they? And they're all in competition.
Yeah.
You went through that years as well. And yet, I suppose the weird thing about punk was that it was the opposite. Everybody was there to actually help each other at that time. And I must admit,
in Manchester, maybe. I don't think London had that.
Yeah, well, in Manchester, yeah. I mean, and you made a lot of friends that lasted with you for years and years and years. Pete Shelley. Without Pete Shelley, we would not have
done. The organizer, wasn't he?
Yeah, because he'd sit with us. Barney and I, just snotty kids. He wasn't much older. I think he may have been a year older or something. But he would sit with us for hours. And we'd talk about groups and what to do and what we should wear and where we should do. Very little about music, funnily enough. It was always about the other. Where do we get a manager from? Where do we get a record label? We never really spoke with him about music. There was nothing about how do you write a song. It was like we literally learnt that the hard way on our own, which I suppose was a good way of doing it.
And here's the thing. So there's you and your mate. You go and see the Pistols. You decide to start a band. None of you don't play anything. I don't know if anyone else did. So did you... Why the bass?
Barney told me to get a bass.
There you go.
Because he was playing guitar.
Yeah. I went bass, right, bass.
And punk bands didn't have two guitars, did they ever?
No, punk bands didn't have two guitars. You're right, guys. Absolutely.
The Clash.
We were looking
sorry. Yeah, the Clash. Yeah, the Clash.
That it had to be the same as the Sex Pistols.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I went to the shop the next day, borrowed some money off my mum, God rest her soul, and said to the guy, I want a bass. And he said, which one? And I went, a bass. And he said, well, how about this one? And he gave it to me. I said to him, but that's only got 4 strings. And my mate,
could you get me a bit cheaper?
And he said, that's because it's a bass, you thick idiot. And not wanting to show my ignorance, I went, oh, yeah, of course, that'll do. And so there I was given this £30, it actually was. My mother had lent me 35. And
which in those days,
a lot of money, yeah. Strangely enough, for an Echo copy, KO copy, it was a lot of money. And he said to me, do you want a case? So I said, how much are the cases? And he said £5. And I thought, oh my God, I am not walking to Little Hulton near Bolton from Manchester town centre with a guitar in a case. I said, no, I'm gonna have to get the bus home. I just couldn't walk that far. And he said, it's all right. He said, I'll go and get you 2 black plastic bin liners. And I was like, yes. I can still remember actually sitting on the bus holding the bass with 2 hands, thinking, what the bloody hell am I going to do with this?
What was the first thing how did you approach it?
It was easy. I mean, once my parents stopped laughing, I actually went back to Salford and met Barney, and we used to spend a lot of time at his grand's house in Broughton. She was an absolutely lovely, adorable woman. And we used to just mess about in her front room, and in it she had an old radiogram. And Barney, being sort of the more technically minded, said, I bet we could wire our guitars up to the needle of the radiogram. And we did. We got the jack leads, stripped them, put them together, put it into his grand's pride and joy, a radiogram. And we must have played for about 10 seconds before the whole thing blew up. And then my abiding memory of that one is us being chased down the street by his grandmother with a rocking thing because we destroyed her radiogram, you know, clutching our guitar. So it was a very punk story from start to finish. I mean, and then we just knew people in the scene. And basically, we were going to gigs. We went to see Eater, Slaughter and the Dogs, Susie and the Banshees, quite early, actually, as it happened.
Big influence, I would have thought.
What were you doing there? But if you were working?
Yeah, I was working at Manchester Ship Canal Company. I was looking after all the land on the Ship Canal. I was a clerk, shiny arse clerk, which was actually quite a good job because it was such a skive that it enabled me to drive them. I had the van. I drove the van. All the bass players seem to drive the van. I don't know if does Martin?
Oh, I've never driven the van.
You know I mean, so a lot of us seem to drive the van. So I used to drive the van and then have to drive everybody home. And I always used to fall asleep at the lights outside work.
Oh my God!
Probably crossing outside work, and so many people going into work that I would inevitably fall asleep, and then someone would have to bang on my window and go, "Okay," and I go, "Oh shit," forget where you were, and then drive. So, so it was hard work, but wonderful moments.
Well, this is what's the beauty of this of what we do. You know, a lot of these stories we hear over the weeks we've been doing this. It's always music out of poverty and music out of struggle and music out of families and cities that where the opportunities aren't always great, you know.
The strange thing is those achievements as well, those wonderful achievements that you get.
Yeah.
Are amazing that you can do them. Supporting the Buzzcocks, we couldn't believe, that Pete Shelley had given us that opportunity to play with them. It was amazing.
I just what's interesting to me a little bit is your choice of Ian, because you see the Sex Pistols and what punk singers were doing at that time was so aggressive towards their audience. It was confrontational towards the audience. You choose this guy though that's being confrontational to himself almost. It's all internalized emotion, isn't it? And it's, he has this shamanistic dance that is like no one else. Nobody's doing this. What was it that drew you to him?
It did develop. The thing is that we met Ian at the punk gigs and got to know him very well because there was like a little clanny group that always were there at watching whoever it was. And he was just absolutely normal, apart from when he turned round and he had hate in orange paint on his donkey jacket. And if there was anybody you would imagine, if somebody spoke to Ian Curtis about anything, and then you said to him, guess what he's got written on his back? They would have gone, kitten? Has he got kitten on his back? Has he got cloud? It certainly would have been, an orange hate. So there was, I suppose, in Ian's world, there was maybe a pull, shall we say, a contradiction in his demeanor. He was a really, really nice guy, and we got on with him really, really well. We never asked him about his music. He educated us in music very well, actually, because when everybody started saying Joy Division sounded like the Doors, me and Barney were going, who are the Doors? Who are the Doors? I've never heard of them. Are they from Stretford? And he said, no, they're an LA band. I'll lend you the LP. And of course, he lent us the LP, and we were like, oh my God, we do sound like the Doors. But Ian knew, but never told us. He was just happy that we sounded like the Doors. So I suppose it was that odd thing, but you are correct. I mean, when he started, Ian was very much like Johnny Rotten.
Oh, right.
Our music was just straight ahead punk, scream, and it developed. Luckily for us, our music and our musicianship between us, considering Barney and I just learnt by playing, developed so quickly. It was ridiculous. I mean, we'd only been together about 6 months, 9 months, and we'd already started writing Unknown Pleasures. The first EP, the music came along so quickly, and it came. We were so good at writing at that time that we would write a song a week.
It sounded like a lot of that was coming. I mean, so much of it seemed really bass driven. It sounds like, were you coming in with the riffs first?
Do you know what, mate? We've always jammed, which was the interesting thing, because we actually jammed right up until Technique. with New Order. We would just jam, Barney, Steve, and I, and we would record.
So no
it
one will
pick
bring a
out the
song in.
No. I mean, there might be a song that was worked on more because of the sequences, but nobody brought a song in. No.
The sound of your band was, obviously Barney had this very spacious guitar phrasing that he did, and we'll talk about Martin Hannett in a bit, I'm sure, but it really is, as Guy was saying earlier, it's your bass playing that high. I mean, you weren't playing the bass, you were playing. I thought it was a synthesizer when I first heard it as a kid. I think it was. You were playing these high riffs all the time. How did that develop?
Very kind of you to say.
We know.
But the thing is that, to be honest with you, and I've said this many times as well, is that Barney had a great amp. He had a Vox UD30. I don't know if you've ever tried one. They are as hot as hell. They are very loud, wonderful sounding.
Yeah.
And he was really lucky to get it. I think he got it for about 70 quid or something. I bought a Sound City 100 valve amp that was awful. I bought a £10 bass speaker that was just as awful. So I think
that you could get that for the price, right?
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt.
Is that what you got off your geography teacher or something?
I bought it off my art teacher, actually, who was in a band called the Salford Jets. Dickon Hubbard. I still see him now. He's playing with us next year. When we did in Apollo, Mike Sweeney, who's the radio.
Yeah, I saw Mike just earlier this year. He's a DJ, isn't he, at Capitol?
Yes. I mean, Mike Sweeney and his band Smithy was the first band I saw live in 1973. The Willows in Salford. I remember them. I can remember the gig to this day. T-Rex, Slade rip-off, and they changed into Salford Jets. When I went down to the music shop, I said to the bloke, and I'm such a dope. I went in and I said, I haven't got a bass amp, and he went, oh, you need a bass amp? And I said, yeah. So he sold me a bass amp, and I took it home, this Sound City 120, and I had my guitar plugged into it, and I had it plugged into the wall, and nothing out of it. So I phoned Barney up, and I said, Barney, I said, sold me lemon. I said, there's nothing coming out of it, mate. And he's going, what speaker did you get? I said, speaker, what's that? No, he said, turn it off, you'll blow it up. And I was like, oh, shit. So then I had to get a speaker. So I read the evening news. In the evening news, there was an advert for a bass speaker, £10, buyer collects.
Which in those days was still nothing for a fucking bass speaker.
And I went down and knocked on the door, and the door opened, and my art teacher opened it from school, from Salford Grammar. And I went, hello, sir. And he went, Peter, he said, you left school 5 years ago. You don't have to call me sir anymore. I said, okay, sir. So I bought the speaker, and then, we were off.
He made me ring on the doorbell, sir.
Hi, sir. I still call him sir now. I don't know how to find him. It's one of those things, isn't it? So then we were set. Then we were off, and we were up and running. We had a rehearsal room. We were off. Barney and I were a two-piece with our friend Terry Mason on vocals first, drums, keyboards. He was just one of those mates that tried everything. But unfortunately couldn't do it. So we were busy, we were writing, and we were enjoying it and doing it all. And then we met Ian at the gigs. Like I said, Ian came along. We couldn't get the bands together because he had a guitarist and a drummer, and we had a guitarist and a bass player, so we couldn't get together. So it was only when his band split up that he was able to come and join us. Then we were practicing, the three of us together. And what happened was that Barney was so loud that I figured out the only way I could hear the bass was when I played high. And when I played high, I could hear it. And Ian immediately said, okay, that's it. That's it. Wow. Play high, mate, play high. And every time we came to rehearse and jam, he'd go, okay, play high. And I'd be like, yeah, mate, whoa. And it came from that, and then he'd shout at Steve and go, Steve, do some jungle drums. Barney put some guitar over the top, and it was Joy Division, yeah. And it was that easy, we were so prolific with it.
But it's funny because once you got into New Order, then and you had all the sequences and everything, and then you had all the nice synths, you had plenty of bass being supplied. Yeah. But the funny thing, so there was nothing at the bottom. Well, so you were just having to drive it all from the top.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the songwriting almost ground to a halt once we lost Ian. We just didn't have the confidence in ourselves to finish anything because we were so used to him being the figurehead and him saying, that sounds really good, that sounds bad, let's work on this, let's work on that. You know, he didn't write the music, but he was the orchestrator.
Yeah.
He picked it out and did that. And once we didn't have him, we were lost.
You've got 3 distinct stories, and we could really have 3 episodes with you. But we'll just, I don't want to race through any of it in many ways, but I do want to say about the first time I saw Joy Division, which was on Something Else, the TV show.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely fell in love with that. Your look, your sound, what the drummer was doing, the sound of the drums, he was using the electronic drum. We were all roughly at that same time, I was going down to the Blitz, and that was starting to happen, that club scene, and we were listening to electronica. I first got introduced to Kraftwerk and that, but it seems like you guys had already picked up on it up there in Manchester. There was a sense of the Germanic kind of Euro dance music that going into your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, again, Ian was such a great educator in the fact that he'd come in each rehearsal with a different LP for us to listen to, which we'd listen to and share amongst us. So he'd bring you Can, he'd bring you Faust tapes, he'd bring you Kraftwerk, The Doors, Iggy Pop, Velvet Underground. And to us, it was like, whoa, we'd never heard any of this stuff, Barney and I. It was like a revelation, and it was amazing. Now, Steve heard it and knew all this music. He was into Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa and all that.
Well, he was a great krautrock drummer.
Yeah. But he
really had that thing.
Yeah, he didn't push it on you. Ian pushed it on you. Listen to this. Listen to this. So the influences were easy to pick up from then on, and it was like it was a revelation really to hear that music for the first time at that age, being as inspired as we were. It was literally like having a rocket up your arse.
Yeah.
Then you add Hannett.
I mean, he is a legend, Martin Hannett, isn't he? I mean, a beast of a man in many ways, and incredibly rude to you guys, I would have thought. But somehow you listen to those records, especially Closer. But you listen to those records, and the beautiful reverb and the space that he's created, and with this small drum sound. This wasn't a punk band anymore, was it?
No, and we thought we were, but he listened to it, and like a good producer should, he just thought, oh my God, I can see something that these idiots can't see. And he did, and I'm very, very happy that he got his own way, and me and Barney didn't get ours, because we would have ruined it. Our record would have sounded like Nevermind the Bollocks or The Clash. He was a very, very difficult character to work with, which, as he went further into his drug addiction, became worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. His character was that musicians should be seen and not heard, which was quite ironic because he was a musician. And I don't know where he got that from.
That's tricky, that one.
Yeah, he's a bass player, and it was an odd thing, but my God, he was difficult to work with. A great friend of ours, actually, who used to work in Manchester, used to say to me, he said, you can take any band that love each other and have loved each other for 20 years, you can put them in a studio with Martin Hannett, and within an hour, they will be at each other's throats.
Oh, my God.
That was what he was like, and it was absolutely true. And the thing is that when we first went to work with him on Digital and Glass, which were 2 fantastic songs, actually, and quite rightly, he did say that, Joy Division were a gift to a producer because of the songwriting. He was like a wizard. We couldn't believe what he was doing. Most of the time, we had no idea what he was doing. But to watch him was absolutely fascinating. Now, the thing is that I must give a shout out to John Briley, who was the engineer at Cargo Studio.
All right.
Who was absolutely fantastic in his own right. So Martin had a very good right-hand man with him to do what he did. The instrument that he loved most, which I'm sure you both know about, was the echo plate, which was the big wall-sized echo thing, units that you used to get in the 70s and 80s. that was the one that he used the most. He pioneered the research into digital delays with AMS.
AMS, yeah.
Yeah, he actually used the first AMS digital recorder, which he used quite well. He had a few other bits of kit that he used very, very well. But yeah, I mean, he drove us mad, and we drove him mad. But he was a genius. He was a wizard, you know. And we were. I mean, he always said about Joy Division. He always said, 1 genius and 3 football fans. That was how he described us.
And there's elements of, like, you know, sort of Floyd with you in the second album.
Well, I was going to bring this up, because what's funny is, because, you know, as if you know, that Gary and I are in this band with Nick Mason. It's not a million miles from what you're doing, going out playing the early Pink Floyd stuff.
Great, I love that.
Which hasn't really been played. But I've always said, right, I'm on record as saying, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun is the greatest song that Joy Division never wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Martin was, considering we did it so quickly, that is the freaky thing. You know, Unknown Pleasures was written and recorded in 6 days.
Wow.
Right now, unbelievable to think that we were overdubbing, and Martin was going around kicking walls, recording the lift, as you said, banging flight cases, smashing glasses. All this stuff in those 6 days, you know, that we did it. We did it over 3 weekends because it was the cheapest way that Tony Wilson, it was the only way he could afford to do the LP with Factory. So, yeah, I mean...
That must have driven you mad, going out and having a whole week of doing whatever, back in your ordinary life, waiting to get back in.
He kept us up all night, you see. He only worked at night.
Yeah.
So he'd start at 6 o'clock, finish at 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning before the next band came in. And we, by the end of 2 days, were completely doolally because we'd never done anything like that before. But again, you know, we didn't know what we were creating, and probably it was a good thing that we didn't.
Well, I have to say, I think digital is you know, that's a piece of art. In, you know, as close as pop music ever gets to art. I mean, lyrics are incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it should have been a single. But, you know, in a typical Factory Joy Division way, we didn't even record.
This is what's so incredible about your story, is that you became a magnet. It starts off with you and Barney, and you become a magnet for the great artistic minds of Manchester. So suddenly there's you get Ian, then you get Tony Wilson, then Peter Saville comes in as well. And
yeah, I mean, Martin and Tony Wilson, their attitude with the, you know, I mean, there is a way of thinking, isn't there? And I'm sure, you know, we're all musicians here. We write songs. That if you've got great songs, really, it's going to take someone really bad to fuck it up. And we were lucky in that we had problems and we had bad happenings, if you like, but it never, ever detracted from the music. And the thing is that you do have to remember, it was quite strange that Joy Division were only professional for 6 months before Ian died, and they finished. Throughout Joy Division's life, I never earned a penny from Joy Division. Nothing.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, it was the strangest thing in the world. You know, to have something that you worked so hard for, and the reason it was hard work was because you were starting from nothing, and then to have it all so cruelly taken away from you with Ian, if you like. You know, the fact that not only had you lost your group, but you'd also lost a great friend, fantastic frontman, a wonderful colleague. Oh, it was.
Were you angry at that time with Ian?
Yeah, I mean, you went through stages. I mean, we took a lot of strength from being together, it has to be said. The first thing we did after Ian died was, once we'd realised what had happened, was we spent a lot of time together, and that helped a lot. And it was a very, very, I mean, yeah, it's now it seems absurd. It seems absurd now that we don't talk to each other with all the things that we've been through. Because you should be able to sit there in a pub with a pint going, oh my God, do you remember that? Because we have, you know, achieved to rise as we did from the ashes of Joy Division, and then to watch Joy Division insanely when we made New Order a success, watch Joy Division come up like the horse, coming up until it's neck and neck at the, you know, and then all of a sudden Joy Division catches you up as New Order, and then in sometimes overtakes you. It's absolutely bizarre, and it was the strangest thing. I mean, I still would love to know why Ian committed suicide. I think I do have you know, I'm well informed, shall we say, to say the least. But the thing that's awful about suicide is that you can never explain it, you can never understand it, and it's always the people that are left behind that have to do that. Mm-hmm. And you just never know what happened. It's happened many times since. You know, I've lost a lot of people along the way, some very close friends to suicide as well, and it's never easy. But yeah, I mean, you know, the fact that his legacy lives on and his gift, and to be able to play it again. I mean, you know, we never used to play Joy Division. You
literally just finished your, what is, you know, now known as the magnum opus, and it was never played. No. That would have been some sort of closure or something, at least, wouldn't it? Or,
well, yeah, but we made a deal between ourselves, sat around the pub, going, if any one of us left, then the band's over. You know, one of them deals. And so when Ian left, you know, the band was over, and we were happy with that. We were happy that it was over. It would never have crossed our minds in a million years to, you know, get another singer and carry on. It just wouldn't have been there, and I don't think it would have been right, and I don't think it would have the effect on people as it does now if you had have carried on in some other.
Well, I think also you probably would have found it hard as those young men and normal young men to have channeled what Ian was trying to do and say in those lyrics, and it took you decades really before you could stand in front of a mic and think, I think I've had enough life experience now to know how to sing an Ian Curtis lyric.
Well, it didn't actually work out like that, mate, I'm sad to say. I mean, I had 3 singers lined up in 2010 for the simple reason it was 30 years of Joy Division, 30 years of Ian's life, as I prefer to call it. And I couldn't celebrate it with Barney and Steve. And I just thought that it was ridiculous that as people, none of us had ever celebrated anything to do with Joy Division, ever. Not 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 25, 30. And I thought, oh man, this is ridiculous. And it was funny because I was touring as a DJ with the Clone Roses. People were coming up to the Clone Roses and they were saying to the lead singer, who was from Glasgow, Ian, sign me shirt. And he'd go, okay, give it here. And I'd be like, fucking hell, you know, they don't even know that he's not Ian Brown. I thought, this is really weird. And I said to the manager, he said, you know what? This makes me want to form the Salford Joy Division and get out there and play the music. Because I've not played it for so long, 30 years, you know, it's ridiculous. And he went, listen, you can't be in your own tribute band, Hooky. And I thought, I'll prove you wrong. So I suppose in a funny way, I am in my own tribute band. But I had 3 singers lined up. And as soon as I talked about forming a band to play Joy Division's music, the keyboard warriors, shall we call them, were out in and they scared off the singers completely, immediately almost. 3 guys who I'd known for years. No, can't do it. Too much bad feeling. Can't do it. Death threats, and all this, and I'm going, shit. And it was Rowetta, God bless her, that said to me in the end from the Mondays, she said, okay, you're going to have to do it. Yeah. And I went, oh my God, you are joking. And I sort of realised that if I wanted a career back, I love DJing, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it. But it wasn't like playing your music. It wasn't like playing your own music. The New Order had been split for 3 years, you know, and I was missing playing terribly. I really was. Our relationship was getting worse between us, so there was obviously there was going to be no reunion. And yeah, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to have to do it. And we practiced it, and luckily, because my voice is in the same register as Ian's, I was able to get away with it. And I had 6 very, very difficult months of quaking and shaking. And the wonderful thing about it was being able to get my son to play bass.
So there's 2 bass players in the band.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, to get him.
All still up the top. There's still no bass. It's all still
up the top, man. And he's actually with the Smashing Pumpkins this weekend. He's bass player for the Smashing Pumpkins.
Because Billy Corgan played for you for a while, didn't he?
That's right.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean, Billy was very, very magnanimous and very generous with his help. And you know, the thing is that again, as we all know, that the only way you can get ahead in this world is to work hard, isn't it? You have to get out there and you have to do it. And it was a delight to do it. It was a delight to drag the gear around, and it was a delight to play all those shitholes again, work your way up, and then, to get to Brixton Academy, and to get to selling out Manchester Apollo and then being able to do the classical has been absolutely wonderful. And the thing is that to me, I am the biggest Joy Division fan.
That's very clear, I don't want to blow smoke up, because you sing it fantastically. And there was you did that brilliant thing that in the lockdown festival thing where you come out and you did Love Will Tear Us Apart, and you got the bass on, and I'm sitting there going, come on, and you never play it.
Yeah, I did the piano version. McLaren did, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that I'm used to, through Factory and Tony Wilson and Rob Gretton, being mad, being daft, doing anything you want. This wonderful world that we're in allows us to show our bad sides and our good sides and our daft sides. And I will. And everybody always says it to me like it's a bad thing. I'll do anything. I love it. I love this business. I love what I do. I love playing. And, again, as I was saying to you before, having my son along and playing Unknown Pleasures with him when he was the same age as I was. When I played it first time, that was the we played Unknown Pleasures, and I was 23, and that gave me such goosebump moment. Hearing the song come together. Once the song was together, it didn't have that effect.
I want to talk about Tony Wilson because, I'm fascinated by this scene, and if people don't know about it, he's an extraordinary character, because this is like some wacko guy who presents a tea time show, and he ends up also having this other show, which the Sex Pistols were on. And what's the name of that show, Guy? I've forgotten. What was it?
So It Goes.
And he's a real scenester. There's something special about this man. I mean, how do you capture him in a nutshell?
But hang on, just to point out, what's different for us is that all you guys in Manchester, because it was Granada thing, you'd known him as this sort of cheesy TV personality for years. To us, he was this scenester and then this sort of situationist, McLaren-esque prankster.
I mean,
but to you, he was like, Frank Boff or something.
We'd bump into him, you see, at all the gigs. We'd see him at the gigs, and Ian was quite incendiary when he got frustrated. And when we were being compared to the other groups in the scene, shall we say, that weren't doing as well as, Slaughter and the Dogs or Salford Jets, he'd go up and blame Tony Wilson. It's your fault. It's on Granada, you bastard. That scene in Control actually happened, where Ian went up to Tony and called him a "see you next Tuesday" because he hadn't put us on his show. I mean, and we were dragging him off, going, Tony Wilson, stop it, you're gonna kill our careers, whatever. So yeah, I mean, he was instrumental in spurring people's imagination. Rob Gretton then approached Tony afterwards and sent him a tape. Tony had seen us on the night, but it was a terrible night, stiff Chiswick challenge. It didn't work out. But yeah, and it was like that. I mean,
did Factory exist at that point? Factory Records exist in any other way?
No. I mean, the oddest thing is that my mother used to take me shopping on Regent Road in Salford every Saturday afternoon. And we would go in a shop. And I always remember this tobacconist where she would buy us cigarettes. And the guy always wore a really brightly coloured dicky bow and a suit, which was very unusual for Salford in those days, right? And she would always say, when we were leaving, and he'd give me a lollipop, she'd always say thank you to Mr. Wilson, Peter. And I'd say, thank you, Mr. Wilson. And it was Tony's dad.
Wow.
So I knew Tony's dad a long time before I knew Tony. His dad was a lovely man. So the thing is that when we met Tony, he was university educated. For Rob Gretton to realise, Rob Gretton, our manager, was the bridge. Considering Rob Gretton was 25 when we were 23, he'd never managed a group. He really did have balls of steel to be able to act and do what he did. And he bridged the bit from us to Tony and the conversation of Tony emulating Rabid Records, which was what Slaughter and the Dogs were on.
Yeah.
Tony's ideas were really interesting. I mean, he was very unusual. I mean, if you go and see the exhibition in Manchester, I hope the pair of you do get a chance. Mosey is celebrating the first 50 releases of Factory Records.
Oh, wow.
Wow, yeah.
The diverse.
Well, we're playing. We're playing. We'll go.
Yeah, the diversity in those first 50 records is absolutely incredible. I mean, the guy really took chances. And the wonderful thing was that he would never force you into doing anything you didn't want to do. And if you'd ask his opinion, he'd just go, darling, you're the musicians, just do what you do. It's great. And we were like, oh, right, brilliant, and then we'd just go off and do what we were going to do. Martin Hannett was a little bit of a glummer attitude than that. So it was a wonderful melting pot with Pete Saville. Alan Erasmus cannot be ignored. Yeah. He was like a stabilising, if you like. And Pete Saville was given free rein. He was just.
But what was Pete Saville doing when he was discovered? What was he designing?
I think he was
before.
He wasn't doing anything. I think he was at college because we used to see Pete.
No, right.
And his beautiful girlfriend that used to dress like a cowgirl in the Roxy room at Pips. So we knew, we didn't look much at him, but his girlfriend used to get a lot of attention because she always dressed in cowboy boots with a little cowboy shirt. And, she stood out a lot. And that was his girlfriend. I didn't find out till years later. So he was on the scene as well. And he was going to the things. And he just asked Tony if he could do a sleeve. And Tony madly said, yes, darling, of course you can. And that was it. And it was as simple as that. I mean, it was very homegrown. It was very natural. It certainly wasn't planned. I remember the factory sample. I remember being asked by Tony to go up and put them all together. And Joy Division went up and put them all in the covers, pasted it all together, and we got paid 50p per 100, I think, each.
What I feel about Tony Wilson is he was kind of doing levelling up way before Boris, wasn't he? I mean, he was, well, you know what?
Please.
I mean, please. Yeah, exactly. But he was really about trying to promote Manchester as the centre of music, as opposed to London, which we'd all been looking at before.
He was fighting a losing battle because he was actually promoting Salford as the centre of music.
That's the funny thing, isn't it? Yeah, but you don't realise until you go and spend time in Manchester that actually everyone and practically everything about Manchester is actually Salford.
Yes, the Buzzcocks were a Salford band, Joy Division were a Salford band, New Order were a Salford band. Yeah. We were lent to Manchester, and we are, and I do feel myself very much an ambassador for Manchester in the world, if you like.
My son has, by the way, just this week has just started at uni in Manchester. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that. And the first thing anyone says, amazing music. It's like Manchester is this world capital of music, thanks to all you group of people.
I feel
it's absolutely done it.
I feel it was. I think there's been a certain amount of levelling up, as Gary said, in many ways. I think that, sort of at the end of Oasis, maybe just where the Cortinas came. I think it's sort of Elbow and the Cortinas were about the last, I think.
Yeah, but it's fixed. It's a fixed point. Not so much. Doesn't matter what happens now. It's fixed as this point in the British musical history map.
Absolutely, and I think that the Hacienda, doing what it did for Acid House in Manchester, and the legacy of it being in the right place at the right time, and New Order ridiculously funding a disco for a whole city for 17 years. It sort of earned you your place in the world. I mean, it was great. You'd get in a taxi in, Brazil in 1988 and 88 to 96. And the guy'd say, where are you from? And you go, Manchester. And you go, oh, Manchester United, Hacienda, Happy Mondays, and you're like, whoa. I mean, Stone Roses, God, it was incredible. And it's a wonderful thing. I mean, if you look at the Stone Roses, my God, the Stone Roses were never particularly successful from a financial point of view, God bless them, until they reformed in 2000 and when was it, 2012? God, it's ridiculous. We've Manchester bands seem to go through a lot of troubled times and yet still be the music of the world.
But Hacienda, I think... Because we probably were influenced by... Because I remember going to New York in 81 and going to Danceteria.
Yeah.
Africa Bombata playing there. And I think that was probably what you were trying to achieve with Hacienda, wasn't it? This great, big, new sort of warehousey...
Yeah, we were. But, I mean, the thing is that we achieved the opposite. we were going to Danceteria and Haraz and all these Paradise, Garage, all these really dark clubs that were just like a sound system in a big space. Not many lights, very, very industrial feel to it. And we came back with that idea. I mean, the biggest idea we had was that people like us had nowhere to go. And Tony Wilson was quite right in saying that we are building this club for people like us because we have nowhere to get together, which was absolutely true at the time. So we over-designed it and turned it into something else. Ben Kelly took it into another sphere. But I mean, that aspect of it is just as important and became an influence on not only fashion, but also culture in clubland. You know, many clubs
Ministry
all
of
around the world.
Sound and etc.
No, but there was a whole other side, wasn't it? Because you had it's like, for it's where like Nick Cave would play. And you know, you had all your rock bands, all your
for the first
alternative bands.
For the first 5 years, it was a venue. And now Rob Gretton had a very interesting idea. His idea was to treat the bands when they came to the Hacienda the way that you would like to be treated when you went to another gig. So he would pay them more if they said, "Well, we want 100 quid, or we're not coming." He'd go, "Well, I'll give you 150." They go, "Oh, all right then. Well, we want 2 bottles of beer." And they go, "Well, I'll give you 2 crates." And they go, "Oh, right." You know, they'd never come across any attitude or a place like this in their lives. And that was how the Hacienda was run, which has probably ended up why we never made a bloody profit. He was right in that aspect because he thought that goodness, if you sowed it, would grow. I mean, as we know as musicians, it's so competitive supporting someone or playing with someone that you're never going to get treated because they don't want you to take their place. But it was a wonderful idea, you know, and he did actually actively pursue it. And everybody wanted to come to the Hacienda. They wanted to come to the Hacienda simply because they got paid more and they got treated better at the Hacienda. It was no contest. And I worked at the Hacienda, as you know, if you read the book. I used to work there for a tenner.
I love your thing about being on the door with a vodka and orange every hour, and then it's every half an hour, then it's every 15 minutes.
That was a little later. I used to want the group's gear in and do backstage security. So I could pay my gas bill. And that was after Blue Monday, if anybody would believe it. But yeah, so I worked there for a tenner. So I got to see all the bands. You know, I got to see Nick Cave play. It was wonderful.
You know, bands like what you were doing in New Order, and, you know, ourselves, when we were making these 12-inch records, I mean, we made them for places like, you know, Camden Palace, Rusty Egan DJing down at Camden Palace.
Great friend of mine, Rusty.
What we were actually doing was also killing ourselves because we were beginning to big up the DJ, and by the time you get to the end of the 80s, no one's even wanting to see a band. They're thinking, actually, if I just go and see a DJ, I reckon I'm the most important person in the club, not the band. And Hacienda were really at the centre of that, weren't they? That DJ culture as Acid House came in.
Yeah, I mean, it was Rob that came up with the idea of overpaying the DJ so that he had a loyalty to the club. And so that DJ who was, you know, big in Acid House, like Graham Park, you'd pay him £1,000 and he wouldn't play anywhere else in that month. And he'd be just at the Hacienda. So it was quite a clever idea to keep the specialness, if you like. So Graham could only play at the club and he couldn't play anywhere else. And that was why he was overpaid. What happened then was that kind of rocketed and became, I mean, and it's still ridiculous now, you know, the amount of money that a DJ can get for playing your record. It's nuts, isn't it? It's just one of those strange.
I'm saying nothing. Pete Tong's one of my best friends. Yeah. So.
I still use CDs, you see, and everybody laughs at me because I just cannot bear to use a USB stick and run it through a computer. I do that all day, you know, and I just like, oh man.
But the story is anyway, you ended up with this amazing, successful club that then you still can't make money out of because the gangsters move in.
Well, yeah, I mean, believe you me, mate, we'd made a lot of mistakes before that. You know, it seemed to be more and more and more and more. 25-year lease on a club. You know, it was doomed from the start. Borrowing from the brewery so you couldn't get a discount because of Ben Kelly, it went over budget and stuff like that. You know, there was a lot of problems to do that.
And you also, I mean, you were paying for everyone's drinks while you were on tour in America, weren't you?
Yes, we came back and found out that all our friends had tabs saying, Hooky said it was all right. And, you know, the manager would go, oh, well, he's not said anything to me. And he said, oh, no, Hooky said it was all right. Bernard said it was all right. They all had these tabs on the bar. And we were like, no, we've not said this. What are you doing? But again, it was very Yeah, it's very mank. You know, that
that's very
is and that cockiness is very mank. Yeah, so it just added in some ways to the allure of the place. I mean, the one thing that I found absolutely unbelievable was that Rob Gretton, throughout the 17 years of the club, would never have a free drink. He insisted on paying for every single drink he had in that club. And I said, Rob, you must be one of the only people in here that's paying for his drinks, and you own it. You know, I just going, what? But that's the type of guy that he was. You know, he
was a good lad, Rob.
He was going to do it.
Is he gone, Rob? Has Rob gone? I did.
Yeah. He's been dead a long time now. He was the first one of us to go. He lived life to the full, we shall say.
Just to jump on a bit, because we've done is something I haven't really heard about, is because you're talking about wanting to do anything. We're talking about clubs and not being scared to do anything. How on earth did you decide that you should sign with Quincy Jones?
Sorry, I missed that guy. What part of it? Peter? What part of this history is Quincy Jones in?
New Order signed. I think only ever English band or whatever signed to Quincy Jones's label in America.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, at Quincy's request. It was the most bizarre thing, and I don't think any of us could take it seriously for a long time. We'd been trying to get a licensing deal, which we'd had with Rough Trade, but Rough Trade had got into real problems in America. So we were looking for a licensing deal, not only for New Order, but also for Joy Division. And it was after Blue Monday, so a lot of American labels were interested, but every time they met Tony, they just couldn't handle him, and they couldn't handle our manager. I remember Mo Austin. We went into a party at Warner's where they were trying to get us to sign.
Mo Austin's the big wheel at Warner's.
At Warner, he was the head honcho of Warner Brothers Records.
Yeah.
Very powerful man. Yeah. And Mo Austin was talking to me, and he said, "Where's your manager, Peter? I want to meet him." And I said, he's over there. And Rob was lay flat on the floor with a joint and a big cloud of smoke around. And I said, he's there. And Mo Austin went, he is your manager? And I was actually quite proud. I said, yeah, it's great, isn't it? You know, and so, I mean, the crossover of attitudes of Tony and Rob was quite difficult. And really, it was only Quest Records that had just got a licensing deal. Mo Austin had given Quincy Jones a budget to put out whatever he wanted. He was probably a very, very powerful man himself, Quincy Jones, then.
This is post-Thriller, right?
Yeah. I mean, he had a platinum disc on his wall that was 75 times platinum in his house. Now, wouldn't we all love one of those? Wouldn't we? 5 times. It's like the whole wall was just Thriller platinum discs. It was absolutely incredible. And he was such a nice guy. And we were convinced that, you know, if we signed to him, he'd be remixing everything and making it, you know, this kind of West Coast typey stuff. We didn't know what the hell was going to happen. And yet when we met him, he said, no, man, I'm not going to be changing anything. I think it's a great record. I think he's done a great job, great production. I'm ready to go.
So he didn't put you together with Arthur Baker then?
We were put together with Arthur Baker.
It was before that.
Yeah, by Michael Schamberg, who was running Factory USA. And that sounds very grand. It was literally Tony Wilson said to me, if you want to put a record out in America, if you can, you do it. And Michael Schamberg heard Africa Bambaataa, and he met Arthur Baker. And he thought, oh, Arthur Baker's the guy from New Order, you know. And it was the first time we'd ever written to order. We'd always written from jams and had a song nearly finished. So that was scary. You know, we didn't know him. He locked us in a studio and we jammed for like 18 hours and a massive pile of tapes in the corner. And when he turned up and he went, what have you got for me? And we go, oh, we've got this 18 hours of tape here. Could you listen to it and pick some stuff out and we'll work on it? And he said, you what, man? Fuck that. And he just pushed the tapes over and said, we'll start again. And, you know, we started jamming. And that was how we got Confusion. And he's been a great friend and a great mentor, actually, ever since. You know, he's a wonderful bloke. I mean, he suffered greatly from being caught in our divorce, which a lot of people have. But, yeah, he was great. And that sort of worked in because Arthur Baker, we were able to do that independently. And we still had the records coming out on Quest, but we still had the freedom to do whatever we wanted anywhere we wanted to do it. And it was great. And Quincy actually, gave us his blessing. And Quincy was instrumental in making New Order huge in America.
Yeah.
What more could you ask for?
I mean, we'd go to America and we'd get a message saying, Quincy wants you to come around for dinner. And we'd go, Quincy wants us to come around for dinner. Is he meant? And, you'd go to Quincy Jones's house and it was sort of like going to your granddad's. He was just so comfortable to be with and so lovely. And it was a bit surreal.
Do you know what? I've got to say that, because I remember when I was touring America, with Floyd and stuff in the 80s, and it was MTV, and you were always all over MTV. And you were and especially with things like the Touched by the Hand of God video and stuff. And it always gave me this great feeling of pride. Not that it was just great that you were doing so well there, but it felt like you were having one over on America in a way.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There was an aspect. I mean, again, we weren't really playing the game. And
and that was Catherine Bigelow in that video.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Schamberg.
I mean, bloody hell, Jonathan Demme, Catherine...
Michael Schamberg was fantastic at finding these producers that were just on the way up and using them to the best of their ability to get our videos banned on MTV. And we were banned with everything for quite a while. You really needed a style culture change before they started accepting our videos. Because every time we delivered one, up till Touched by the Hand of God, we weren't in it. We weren't in the video, so they wouldn't show it because the band weren't in the video.
In 24-hour party people, and can I just say a big shout out to one of my best friends, John Sim, who plays Barney in the film. It comes across a bit that Blue Monday was almost written before Gillian joined the band, or was that not the case?
No, Blue Monday wasn't written before Gillian joined the band. No, I mean it came about quite simply. Actually, Barney had heard a Donna Summer record. We had the technology in a way. It was still programming in binary. So we had the equipment, we had the DMX. So we had the tools to make it. Barney was inspired by a drum riff he heard on a Donna Summer song. And he wanted it to sound like a disco record without anybody playing it. And that was the brief that he had for Blue Monday. And then we just built it up and jammed it until, you got it. I mean, it started off, literally, we wanted it to be an instrumental encore that we would play because we didn't want to play encores. We wanted to be able to press a button and an encore would play so we could go and get drunk. We were literally just going to play it at the end of a gig so that the fans had stopped moaning so we could get to the dressing room to drink beer, Yeah, we literally had to be dragged to do the vocal.
One of the American...
There's no chorus.
There's no chorus in it, no. One of the American bands that I wondered if you was plugged into dance stuff that was happening, that seemed to be taking over your music. You seem to be more influenced by, you wanted to be a dance band as opposed to a rock band.
Well, I mean, I didn't. I wanted to be a rock band. That's where we got I suppose it was a compromise early on. Barney wanted it to be a dance band, and I think Steve was happy to go along with it. I'd say Gillian wasn't particularly vocal in those days. So the thing is that I was desperate for us to be a rock band the way we had always been. But the thing is that the sequences amalgamated quite well into the way I played. A lot of the melodies that I were playing were able to go over the sequences. And I think if you're going to be honest, that over time, people's tastes change, people's ideas change. It's just like a marriage, isn't it? You fall out of love because someone just changes. So groups are renowned for that. But yeah, I mean, it was a good fight. And, I fought the good fight for rock for a long time. And we actually came up with quite a unique sound. New Order had...
But I was saying, you actually won that, where a lot of people fall. You totally won straddling those fences, and that you got the rock audience and the dance audience.
Yeah, we did.
You're incredibly lucky, but not alienating one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny now. I mean, everything's funny now. Believe you me, after we have done for 14 years, non-stop. Literally to this moment, we are still fighting. So the thing is that it tends to colour everything rather grey, which is one of the things that I hate about it. Because as I said before, we should be in a pub and go, how did we get away with that?
I've been in the same situation. Still am.
I know, it's awful. It really is awful. But I mean, you know, you have to stand up for what you believe in, don't you? Otherwise, I don't think anybody would think anything of any of us. So the thing is that, yeah, I mean, if you look at a song like Sunrise, I was thinking how lucky I am to have written a bass line like Sunrise, like Age of 10, you know, all these great bass riffs that I've been very lucky. And I've been enabled to do it by the group. You know, without the group, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So the thing is that, and it was odd, you know, people wanted to change. But you do. It's a very difficult position to be in from a musical point of view.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did. I think that, you know, if you look at technique, and if you look at, to me, the last great New Order song was Regret.
Oh, it's a great song.
Regret, which I've got to say, I have to say, which is the one, when I was still drinking, that's the one I played air bass to. But that is the last great pop moment I had as an adult, in that I remember I was driving down Sunset, that was played on K-Rock, and I literally just turned the car around, went to Virgin, went, give me that New Order record.
Yeah.
Hooky, I'm being told by our producer we've got to let you go. Which is, you know, I knew this was going to be a difficult one. I mean, because I said to Guy,
well,
difficult to get it all in, is what I mean. Because I said,
Mate, I will happily give you a number 2. Don't forget that you two.
Oh man, we would
very
love that.
helpful to me, shall we say, in all through the years. Let's put it that way. You know, it's competition as whatever as people, and so, you know, I'd be delighted. I appreciate the complicated manner of my career.
But it feels like you've had 4 lives: your Joy Division, your Hacienda, your New Order, and now what you're doing now as a solo artist. It's 4 complete lives.
I mean, there's a lot of bitterness around New Order. And as she quite just said to me then, as she came out the door, boring. Thank you, darling. You know, it's one of those things. So there's so many positive things that you can talk about.
Oh, that was good.
Well, it's exactly what you said. It was just, I mean, difficult in that, not difficult, actually unbelievably easy, but yeah, it's just too much. I think there's going to have to be a part 2.
I think there is. I do relate to all that stuff about not, you know, the pain of not being able to sit and have a chat in the pub with your old compatriots from the past and talk about things that were so unique to your youth and what you did and what you achieved, and just suddenly decide, I'm not going to do it anymore, I'm not going to talk to you. Why do we get like that?
Yeah.
You know?
It's the dark side of show.
But to think I'm going to be like that with you one day. I'm going to hate you from afar.
Yes, sooner than you think.
Well, not before next week, I hope, when we'll have someone else on.
Exactly. So thanks to everyone for listening. Please leave your reviews and tell everyone about it. And I don't see we had a big story in the Times this week come from our show. So, you know, so keep it here for the scoops.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll see you next week. It's good night from me.
And good night from them.